Hey YouTube, this is Kevin Bolin of Bolin Small Engine, and today I'm working on a Stihl MS 170. The guy that dropped this off had told me that he hadn't had the saw over a year or two. I knew that basically to be bullshit when I saw the saw, but besides that factor, he seemed a little shady, so I always look into, my customers, especially if they're a new customer and they bring me a piece of equipment. I must say in his situation though, he would actually told me the truth. It was his saw. Howsoever, it wasn't, just a year or two old. Okay, this saw is actually about 5 years old. And as you can clearly see, he had run this saw through the ringers. Okay, I mean, he has given this saw hell. He hasn't changed the spark plug. He hasn't cleaned the air cleaner. It's completely caked up with sawdust on the inside. Basically, he has neglected this saw. Now, the reason that I mention this is because, guys, I want to educate my YouTube viewers out there that you need to maintain and clean your equipment. There is no excuse for being lazy, okay? If you have a chainsaw like this and you're neglecting that chainsaw and you know it, then obviously you're going to have problems, guys, okay? So, for God's sakes, it doesn't take much, okay? Just take a little carb cleaner, pull your air cleaner off, spray it out, and blow out your air cleaner. Okay, that will prevent this sawdust from getting inside your intake, making its way into the cylinder and scoring your cylinder, basically ruining your saw. Also, when you change your gas, okay, or when you add gas, I should say when you add gas. Most people don't change gas, but I do. If a saw's been setting for over 30 days, I'll dump out the gas and I'll put fresh gas in the saw. Basically as a kindness to my customers. It does get a little expensive at times, especially when you have 4 or 5 pieces of equipment and you're continuing to fill them up. But I'm a nice guy, what can I say? That's what I do. I don't like doing it, but I do it. Anyway, getting back to the issues with these saws. These saws had terrible carburetor issues when they came out. The carburetors would basically screw up within 2 years because of the ethanol. The ethanol would affect the carburetors to such an extent to where it would make them run real lean, okay, and you'd basically burn the saws up. For a long time, they thought the problem was with the seals. And don't get me wrong, guys, the seals that they originally made weren't all that great. But the new seals that they replaced it with are worse. God, I can't begin to tell you how piss poor the new seals are. These are the older style seals, and these are the ones that I would recommend that if you had to go through this saw and you were going to rebuild it, potentially by putting new rings in it, I would tell you to put new seals and use the older style seals. Do not use the newer style. I do not have one of the newer style seals here, unfortunately. I will get you a part number. The newer style seals are just complete pieces of shit. They only have a single, if you see this older seal, you'll see there's a lip on the outside as well as on the inside of that seal. The newer ones only have a single lip on them. Now, you know as well as I do, if you work on these pieces of equipment, a single lip is not going to hold up, okay? It's just common sense. Why Stihl done that, I will never know. Well, maybe they done it just basically so that you'd burn the saws up and have to come back and buy another one. I don't know. But the reason that I'm mentioning this is so that you'll be aware. You want to stay away from the newer seals. You want to use the old ones if you have to rebuild one of these saws. Also, the duct bills, or tank vents, if you will, okay, that are behind this piece of plastic here that allows your tank to vent. They'll get clogged up with sawdust just because of the way these saws are designed. Also, the gasoline will swell these duct bills, or like I said, tank vents, to the point to where they won't vent. So what you'll run into is a flooding issue. The tank's going to build pressure naturally, and it has nowhere to go but through the carburetor and into the cylinder, also making its way into the muffler, making these saws extremely difficult to start. I do not know why that they haven't modified some way to fix that problem. I guess it's just because the saws are built so cheap, and you know, they just don't really want to get their hands dirty with the problem. I really don't know. I don't want to come off like I'm dishing Stihl. I actually like Stihl. I'm a big fan of Stihl. But I have to admit there was definitely room for improvement when they made these saws. Also, I want to note to you guys that the intake boot that you will find right behind here were really bad for leaking because of this plastic band. I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but there's a plastic band in there that would eventually stretch because of the heat and allow you to have an air leak, causing you to have a world of problems, mainly burning up the saws. Like I said, I have no idea why Stihl didn't go back and fix these problems. As I said earlier, probably because they just didn't want to get their hands dirty with it, or maybe they just wanted to wash their hands with it and say to hell with it. I have no idea why. Another problem that I'm going to mention with these saws is the oiler. Now the oiler on these saws is exactly like your 025s, 023s, okay? They're not all that great. Don't get me wrong. For the price, you know, they're not too hard to change out. You can get aftermarket ones online. That's what I do, and I have to admit that the aftermarkets seem to hold up just as well as the OEM. But as I say, you know, that's just another problem that they had. Obviously, you can see that that's what the guy had ran into with this. You can see the saw had been hot, the chain anyway, and he ruined his bar and bought him a cheaper alternative bar. At this point, I've pretty well covered everything that I wanted to talk about the MS 170. The main issue here with this particular saw was it was extremely neglected. And as I say, you do not want to neglect a chainsaw to this extent. Obviously, I'm going to check this chainsaw over and make sure that the cylinder isn't scored. And I'm going to order him a carb and clean everything up if the cylinder isn't scored. Now, as I mentioned earlier about the seals, when you bring a chainsaw to me, I always pressure test the chainsaw. Okay, there are a lot of shops out there that will not pressure test a chainsaw. They just want to get you in and get you out as quick as possible. You need to always do a pressure test and a vacuum test on your chainsaw. As I mentioned earlier, these seals have two lips on each side. If those lips on those seals are able to leak, then you're going to burn a chainsaw up. Now, a lot of your dealers know this, and as I said, it's job security. They don't want to reveal this to just anyone out there. But if you neglect your saw to the extent that this guy has, and you have a seal leak, even if your cylinder and piston are good now, you can potentially burn the saw up later. So it's always important to pressure test your seals. If there's any leakage at all, replace the seals. I am of course going to do that if, you know, this saw proves to have that problem. But at this point, guys, I think I've pretty well covered everything that needs to be said about these MS 170s and 180 Stihl chainsaws. I'm going to go ahead and end the video. If there's any questions or anything that you want to potentially tell me about that I may not have addressed in this video, please leave me a comment and I'll be glad to get back in touch with you.